Excellent. So my name is Victor. The purpose of my tech is this: tech as a force for good. For any of you guys that are following the news, you probably see that tech is kind of under an assault, which is kind of crazy because tech is such a broad, amorphous term. It's like saying, apparel is under assault. But tech is actually under assault as an industry for creating more damage than it is good, I'd say at the macro level. So I'd love to spend the next half hour talking about that, sharing my perspectives on whether, one, this is true, two, giving you guys some frameworks on how to think about this as you're scaling your own businesses or someday running your own businesses, or maybe you run a business today. How do I think about driving social good with a business? And then I'm going to actually walk through very specific examples with Evite. So our agenda, I'd like to try to frame my presentations with what I call golden nuggets. Excuse me. Golden nugget. So what is a golden nugget? A golden nugget is something that you can walk out of the room with, hopefully, that changes some of your mindset or how you think about the world. I don't expect you guys to digest all of this, but literally, if there's just one thing that you walk out and think differently, I'll be happy. So what we're going to go through today, something called the fourth stakeholder, which is my fundamental frame for how you think about social good and driving good in a company. Impact circles, which is how you measure it effectively, and Evite's example. So the fourth stakeholder, what is that? Sounds like a bad spy novel or something. I actually have the URL for the fourth stakeholder. There's nothing on it, but someday something big is going to be there. You guys actually can't see that, can you? I'll be impressed. Can anyone see what that is? Okay, imagine, have you all seen The Matrix? Who's not seen The Matrix, actually? Okay, you would have to leave the room immediately. The best sci-fi movie ever made. Okay, there's a scene where there's Neo coming out of the pod. He's just been jacked up by this artificial intelligence engine. Right, he lives in a fake world. I mean, if you read the news today, you would almost think, like, this is the train that we're on. We're basically about, if we don't put tech in check, we're going to all become these zombified, VR living Duracell batteries, right? Which is not true. So I'm here to tell you, at least my perspective, that is completely untrue. And as a complete aside, all of the concern around renegade AI is completely misplaced in my mind. It makes for interesting sound bites and interesting blurbs, but the concept, we are so far away from creating a generalized intelligence that has control of physical devices outside of our control that you don't need. Sleep easy. This is not going to happen anytime soon. But what is happening is some other bad stuff. Sorry if I swear. You can, have bleepers. You can bleep it out of the video. 7-second delay. Second delay. What is happening? We have some bad stuff happening in tech. So Facebook. If I take the extreme position on Facebook, actually, I don't even think it's extreme. If I give you my perspective on Facebook, what's the big issue? We have created, as a side effect of the business that they have created, we have created the greatest propaganda engine ever created in the society. Combination of Facebook and Twitter, actually, the two of those things. They were not built to be propaganda machines, but they are the most efficient propaganda machines ever. To the point where things like conspiracy theories or swaying elections, right? These are happening on these platforms. So that's Mark fading away into the wall like Homer Simpson. If you haven't watched The Simpsons, you also have to leave the room. Jeff Bezos, right? We've created this amazing monstrosity of Amazon. It's bringing prices down, right? It's good for the world. We're generating commerce, $1 trillion market cap, making a lot of people wealthy. We have horrible work environment, potentially, right? That's some of the press claim. It's like, oh my God, these people are working under crazy conditions. Isn't that terrible? What else do people say about Amazon? Amazon's destroying small business. Right? It's making it impossible for businesses to scale because of the economics, right, and the market power of their platform. Probably true to some degree. Tesla gets a little bit less scrutiny, I would say. Like, you have some little micro issues. Probably the biggest thing, if you looked up Tesla and bad news, they'd say, well, the Tesla AI is not very good, and it's driving people into, there was a gentleman who died, unfortunately, because the auto drive literally careened him into a wall and he died. The accident rate on Tesla as a car is one of the best in the world. It might be the best in the world, right? It's one of the safest cars ever made. But again, the press wants to jump on and say it's horrible. out of these three, actually, just as an aside, I think Elon has probably done the best job at creating a business that is having broad levels of social change, even outside of business scope. I'll talk about that in a second. So what's true? Like, are these horrible entities that are doing horrible things for the world, or are they actually delivering good, or is it counterbalanced? Like, do you shut them down? Like, how do you think about it? Well, I'll tell you how I think about it with the next frame. But as an aside, oh, this is funny. Have you guys seen the deep fake of Bezos? And those are actual deep faked videos. They basically took Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and algorithmized themselves into a Star Trek video. And it's really funny. But I put it up there as another example of something really, really bad, right? Our visual processing engines are literally getting so good. This wasn't them talking. Like, this was literally took a bunch of photos of them and put them into a video. And the average person, if you look at that, you wouldn't know that they didn't actually act that scene. So, what happens if you combine deepfake propaganda onto the world's biggest propaganda machine ever made? Right, that's a bad combination. So some bad stuff can happen if we don't watch carefully. So how do you keep all this stuff in check? There we go. One problem that I see is that the business framework for how you manage a business is incomplete. I think, Robert, you mentioned the stakeholders earlier on. There's a very common frame in business, which is like, what are your stakeholders? And this framework has evolved over time to encompass more and more things. When businesses first got created, right, it was very simple. I'm making a business to make money. Right, at some point, and again, there was no date, but these are fluid ideas. At some point, the industries overall really got savvy to the concept of customer centricity. Right, it was, you need to actually build a really good product. You can't sell snake oil forever, right? People are going to figure that out at some point in time. You actually need to build a great product. So there's great metrics like Net Promoter. If are you guys familiar with Net Promoter as a customer metric, right? There's great work in the system around customer centricity. More recently, employee has taken a lot of focus. Right, so what's the concept here? The concept is, well, I can't deliver for my customers and create economic value unless I have a motivated, engaged, highly compensated employee base. And that has led to things, potentially some bad things if you think about it. As a person from tech, I actually feel bad for most businesses because, so I was at Microsoft in the 90s. Microsoft was the pioneer of the crazy work environment where they give you free food and free snacks, and it's almost like a college campus. I loved it, sorry. No. As a kid out of school, I was like, oh my God, this is a work environment? This is the most amazing thing. Why I feel bad is, that's a great employee environment, has great results from a customer shareholder perspective that is almost impossible to replicate if you're not a monopoly business making 95% profit margins on your business lines. Right? It's very, very expensive. And so now I actually face this now with Evite. Evite's a pretty small company. And literally I was like, oh God, do we need to get a foosball table? It's like, I guess we do. We have one. We actually have one. But yes, it's hard. But you can see, right, this wave of employees, free food. What the hell? What is this free food? There is an expectation now, I don't know if you guys know this, that if you go to a business, they're like, you're going to be fed free food. Like we had a huge uproar because we took away the bagels for a while in our company. But this is incomplete. What's missing is explicitly adding society as a stakeholder. This is at least my personal point of view. The way you get businesses to drive broad social change and social good is to explicitly add it as a fourth stakeholder on par with these other three. Because it's true, when you run a business balancing these three, this is what you focus on. These are the metrics that you set. It's where you spend your energy. I personally don't think it's good enough to just say, hey, business leader, make sure your business is doing good. I think the way to do that is to scorecard it as the fourth stakeholder, effectively on equal terms with these other three. And that's how Evite runs. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So how would I describe, this is a quote from me. It's a little weird, I know, to put a quote from yourself. But I actually think it's a good quote. And at some point I put like anonymous, and then I felt disingenuous, because I'm like, well, I really do know who this is.
You just put Victor Cho.
But then I'm like, it's kind of the same vein. But I do really feel this at my core, and I run all my businesses that I have the privilege of running this way. If you're blessed with the ability to control levers of scale within the society, you have a moral obligation to use them for social good. Now that's a principle that I operate with, which has led me to the frameworks that you're going to see and how I run the business. But I do believe it at my core. Right? Nobody who has succeeded, I would argue, in life and has scale levers, they didn't do that themselves. I don't care how much they think that they were the captain of the universe. They did that because the society gave them the education and the tools and the infrastructure, right, to do that. And so if you're controlling the scale lever, you have disproportionate ability to turn that back into some social good. So that's my foundation. Feel free to share it and attribute it to me. So fourth stakeholder, influence necessitates responsibility. I used to have this saying, with great power comes great responsibility, but then I thought that was cheesy because that's from Spider-Man. It's hard to be serious with a Spider-Man quote. So second concept, so if assuming you buy it and you say, yes, I'm going to put the fourth stakeholder society on par with the other three, how do you go attack that? How do you think about the circles of impact? How would you measure it? So the second concept I'd like to share is how I think about it, which are impact circles. Another quote from me. This is the last one. And this might be a little bit contrary to thinking, but I also fundamentally believe at certain levels of scale, following an admirable purpose in your business is not good enough. That is not enough to deliver on the fourth stakeholder. And if I had to encapsulate the fundamental problem with tech, and I know that's a broad brush, but if I had to encapsulate it, it is this problem. It is that we have a bunch of leaders who at their core believe the businesses they are building are here for a higher purpose, and so then they're like, I'm good. Right? I'm sure Jeff Bezos thinks like, oh my God, I am bringing lower prices to the world. People can buy stuff that they couldn't buy before at much cheaper prices, right? That means people that are impoverished have better access to goods and materials. Like that, isn't that a great thing? I feel great about that. And it's like, doesn't feel totally great because now he's funneling a lot of money into other causes, which is also good. I don't ding him for that. I think he just sent $10 billion or committed $10 or $20 billion into climate change. But my contention is it's actually a small sliver of the impact that Amazon could be having because it is such a broad ecosystem. So it's not good enough because mainly of this issue, which is second order effects. And let's see, I think it's probably too bright for this slide to work, but let me do a quick check. Stare at those circles for a second. And let's see, does anybody see like an animated GIF of, do you guys see those little circles cruising back and forth? Who sees that? All right, good. Kind of works. That is not there. That is a pure artifact. This is a static image. It is not moving. This is one of my favorite optical illusions. Right? And if you're here, it's probably pretty intense. Like you actually feel like it's moving. So what is that? That is a second order visual effect of all of this crazy chaos that they put on this slide. The problem with businesses is they have as they get larger, massive second order effects like this. And if you don't think about them, then you run into the world that we're in now, which is tech is doing some damage. So what are the levels of impact as I think about them? That might be a little bit hard to read with the font, but let me start with the third circle. It says business mission and purpose. So that's where most companies start, right? What's the business that I'm building? What's its purpose? Is it a good purpose, right? Within that, if you go down a little bit, there's other things that the business can do to drive social impact. There can be a philanthropic element of the business. Salesforce is a great example, right? Within their business model, they've said, hey, we're going to take 1% of net profits and funnel them into charitable cause, which I love, right? It says, like, hey, our business engine is going to actually do a little bit of social good. There are business policies that you can control within your business, right? We're only going to source from sustainable sources, right? There are things you can do within the business's control. This is where most companies tend to spend their energy because there are things they can control. There are policies they can put into place, and they can feel good about it. They can measure it pretty easily. Most companies don't think about these other things, but this is where the issues are, some of the big issues are. One is this concept of the role model halo. Right? As you get larger and larger, you are under a lot more scrutiny. Right? You become a role model for the rest of the world. On the employee side, right, Microsoft did this with their employee perks 20, 30 years ago, and it kind of started a wave as a role model of, oh, that's how you're going to treat employees. So companies have a very big lever, especially the big ones with high brand profile, where they can start setting the role model that will, they're not going to be able to measure it overnight, right? But it will have an impact, right? You will start to see the boulder start to turn. And then the nasty one is this concept of second order effects, right? Businesses are terrible. People are generally terrible about conceding the second order effects in their business and then doing something about it, because the reality is these things are now way outside of the control of the business and might be existential risks to the business, which is the case for, I would argue, Facebook. So let's dissect Facebook real quick under this frame. So what's Facebook's business and purpose? It'll vary, but at a high level, if you ask them out, yeah, they're here to connect people, right? That sounds kind of good. People should be connected, right? Isn't that admirable? Maybe. It's okay. We're gonna connect. Maybe you buy it. Are there micro pockets of their purpose that are valuable? Absolutely, right? They have connected on the positive side, right? We have had positive democratic change in certain places because of these platforms. Great data point that says connection is good, right? If you're interacting real time with a sick relative over these online platforms, is that connection good? Yeah, absolutely. What about if you go to the extreme and you're using it so much that you're depressed? Yeah, that's probably not so good. So it's a little bit gray. Facebook has a great set of philanthropic things that they do. They have donations embedded within the Facebook platform. They raise a lot of money for charitable causes. I haven't seen anything super prominent in terms of their business policies. So maybe not a lot there. Their role model halo is not great, I would argue. Not a lot of things that I, as a business leader, look over at Facebook and say, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like I should really go do that. And here's the bitch for Facebook. Their second order effects are hugely negative. Hugely negative. So what are the second order effects? Things we've talked about, right? They built the biggest propaganda machine ever created. There are massive health second order effects from the social networks that we don't understand as a society, but I am on the opposite end of the spectrum, basically saying, I think these are actually very damaging. Right? There is a non-trivial chance that the depression rate increases that we're seeing across the society are, to some degree, a function of the combination of the social networks and the mobile phone device connected. Right? People are spending way too much time on devices, not interacting with each other in person. Right? This is actually physically changing physiology in people, creating depression, higher suicide rates. The election, right? Clearly Facebook has some impact in election meddling, right? We have an entire foreign nation that's using the platform. Some of these problems, I would argue, for Zuckerberg would be easier to fix with that frame if he was thinking fourth stakeholder. What would be one example? For the life of me, I do not understand why Facebook did not shut down all political advertising. Twitter did it. Google did it in a big chunk. It's actually a very easy decision. I think it's $200 or $300 million or something. Tiny drop in the bucket. If you don't know how your network is being used for election fraud, then shut it down, right? Yeah, it might have a short-term shareholder impact, but shut it down. So huge ding there. The bigger issue for Facebook is, let's take the big one. You created maybe the biggest propaganda machine ever built. That is your business, right? How do you deal with that? I would argue there are things you could do, but there are things that might take a massive whack to Facebook's profitability. And that is why, at least in my mind, you have to put this fourth stakeholder on balance so that you can balance across the four and say, no, we are going to take a 30% haircut in our revenue scale or a 50% haircut in our profitability. And yeah, shareholders are going to be impacted, but we're counterbalancing it because we know that's the right thing for the society. So I think Facebook's got the hardest problem. Let's do Amazon. I should call this something like the impact circle game. I don't know. Amazon's business and mission is what? Lower prices. Basically, if you ask Jeff, I want to bring lower prices and faster delivery to the world. Like, that's my mission in life. And God, they have delivered that in spades. It is, you guys probably, does anyone, actually, do students buy on Amazon? I don't even know what students do these days. Do you guys use Amazon? Do you guys know what Amazon is? I assume you, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. Can Amazon deliver to a dorm? I don't know how that works. For the folks that maybe not students, I'd actually be curious on this one. This is a great question to ask around the power of tech. It's a question I always think about, I don't know, every 3 or 4 years is like, what is the one company in the world, it doesn't have to be tech, but what's the one company where if it went away today, you would have the most emotional angst and pain? Right? That's a great question if you think about it. At least for me personally, it was Amazon. Right? It was like, what happens if my Apple goes away? Android's not. Yeah, it kind of sucks. I'll go there. Sorry if any Android users. It's like Microsoft goes away, Apple's there. Apples are great, right? Uber goes away, there's Lyft. Amazon goes away? I lose time, right? He has fulfilled on the promise. There's a non-trivial amount of time that has been saved because of the delivery sophistication. Right? So decent mission and purpose, maybe. They don't do a ton of with philanthropy. Bezos is doing a lot, right? So he's funneling the equity that he builds and then puts that towards social cause, which is wonderful. Business policies. Here, Amazon has a huge lever they could pull. Right? You imagine all of the businesses that flow through their ecosystem, right? They have a control lever in the society that they probably are not moving aggressively enough because it would be counter to some of those other things. It would be counter to maybe cost and maybe speed. Right? But could they set policies kind of like Walmart has done in the past? Walmart has done things with packaging where they said, look, no one's going to be in our store unless you do X. If Amazon did that, would it change society in a fast way? Absolutely. Are they a role model halo? I'd say questionable. What are the second order effects for Amazon? These are interesting. What are the big ones? The big claim, right, is that Amazon is destroying the small business ecosystem because it is the control point. It's effectively just this huge meta engine on top of commerce, controls everything, and then it makes it impossible for these small businesses to operate and function. And then the evil version is, Amazon which is not untrue. Amazon then figures out what are the products that sell the best, right? What are the feature sets? Let me go source that, right? I'll not even white label. I'll brand it under these horrible brand names. Amazon Basics. Like, that's a terrible. It's like, why would you buy anything that just said, Amazon Basic? But they do it, and it's a massive business. They've built this huge secondary business. So how do you feel about that one? Second order effects of Amazon. Is it good or bad? That's a hard one, right? That's an open question. It's also helping a lot of businesses grow. Right? So I'd argue, should they be watching it? Absolutely. Should they maybe study and understand the dynamics of their business in terms of the small business ecosystem? Absolutely. Absolutely. One comment I do have on Amazon, which I do think they mistake low prices for societal good. So I will make that as a strong statement. Right? Low prices de facto don't necessarily mean something good has happened. It might just be a redirection of dollars, right, from one place to another. Right? It's very possible that their engine has basically killed the ability of small businesses. That's therefore created larger businesses, which can offer lower prices. So yeah, consumers get a little bit of a benefit in terms of lower prices, potentially. But now you put a whole bunch of people out of work because they can no longer operate their small businesses. What's the net impact of that? I think that's very unknown. At a high level, unless you actually add real productivity into the system, it's just redirecting dollar flows. So it's a separate chat I could give. So, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Seems like a lot. It's like, okay, I get it. Fourth stakeholder, super important. Wow, lots of different ways you can do it. How does Evite do it? Do we do it? Short answer is yes, it's very doable. So for those of you that don't know, Evite is a reasonably scaled business. We have 100 million users, 30 million active monthlies. We send out around 3 billion invitations have been sent out over our lifetime. Oh, I'm the CEO there. Did I mention that? I forget. Figure out if I mentioned it. You did, Robert did. So we've got decent scale. We are skewed a little bit female in terms of the audience, 68%. That's in terms of the visitors. In terms of the people throwing parties, if you actually go into Evite and send out a party, that's like 90% female. Men basically at their core are social schmucks, and if it were up to men, again, broad brush, if it were up to men to throw all the parties, our business would die. So that's not good. But our purpose, let's start with our purpose. Our purpose I feel great about, right? We bring people together face to face. That is our ethos. My goal in life is not to build a business that sends the most invitations out. I could care less. Right? That's just a mechanism to achieve the purpose, which is have things like this happen, right? People spending time together face to face. That's super valuable because, one, it actually gives the most, it's very rewarding on an emotional level. It's actually incredibly beneficial on a physiological level. And we're at risk as a society of not spending as much face-to-face time because of things like Facebook and the devices. There is a thing called nomophobia. Do you guys know this? It's real. It's a real thing. It's fear of losing your phone. Like it is actually a clinical thing. Nomophobia. If I were to grab your phone, you might have it. Go through this mental exercise. If I told you go put your phone away for the next 3 days, would you be a little freaked out? Yeah, you might have it. The opposite of nomophobia is, spending time together, interacting. We are social creatures at our core. Right? It's proven science. Right? There's a great Harvard study on, it was kind of the longevity of the human being. It was the longest tracking study I think ever done. It's over like 70 or 80 or 90 years. And the short takeaway from that was, wow, the thing that was most predictive of long life and health was strong social connections. So spend more time with each other. Find people that you like. So our purpose I feel good about. Our business practices we control I feel good about. We actually have turned on donations within our platform, and we are about to cross $20 million raised, probably in the next month. So this is people throwing parties, and we literally, the first thing you see as you go through our flow is, oh, have you considered raising money with this party for some social cause? It is the prime marketing real estate that we put into our flow. This is something, we don't take a cut of this money, right? This is something we do, again, for a fourth stakeholder. We think it's the right thing to do. We could make a lot of money by selling that space to somebody or putting in some kind of commerce partner, right? But we don't, because we believe at our core, wow, having 100 million people come together, this is a great point where we can get people to leverage that connection and do something good, raise some money. So we feel great about this. There's a great company called Pledgeling we partner with. If you guys are running any businesses that need to do donation flows, little plug for them. They are like the API. They're like the Stripe of nonprofit and donations. So they're awesome. So we feel good about that. And I do spend time thinking about that role modeling circle as Evite. The best example of this is I spend a lot of time as the CEO making sure that we are balanced in terms of gender equality in the company, because tech is horrible. They set a horrible beacon. So we are, our directors and above, right, in terms of seniority, we're 50% female. All managers, 54%. I think employee base is around 60%. So we're very well balanced. I hope that, again, there's, other than me talking about that and saying, hey, that's possible, there's not a lot that comes from that. Again, we're a small business, but am I hoping that has some ripple effect through the society? Because other tech businesses see that and say, okay, it is possible, right? You can do it, because you can. So I think we covered all. Oh, the last one for me, how do I feel about my second order effects? I do think about that. It's like, God, what would happen if we went crazy and everyone started throwing more parties, getting together, putting down their phones? I haven't come up with a good negative second order. I guess maybe too much alcohol or... Anyway, long story short, I don't worry about the second order effects of Evite yet. We're also, again, not huge. The one comment I would make is the scale is important here, right? So this arrow, like if you're starting a B corporation or a benefits corp, or you're starting a nonprofit, like you don't have to worry about this stuff. Your purpose is good, right? Go do the good that you want, and that is probably going to be sufficient. When you're running a $1 trillion market cap company or something that has massive, massive societal footprint, I believe you need to start thinking up this chain and building it into your system. So my takeaway on that one, it's possible. You can reach me at Victor Cho at Evite. I have a website, victorcho.com. Oh, and another plug, part of the Conscious Capital LA organization, which is a great org that comes together thinking about issues just like this. How do you breed positivity into the capitalist system? So thank you. Hopefully that was useful.
Excellent. All right. Okay, don't leave. I'm not gonna stand on stage because I was just there like a Dybbuk earlier. So I'm going to ask for questions. Think about your impact circles. Okay, we have one down here. So that's speed. Excellent.
Victor, do you think that more regulation of this industry is good or bad?
If I were running those businesses, my first thought would be like, do I understand these issues, and can I self-regulate? I don't think they're going to go there. The movie industry did a great example of that, right? In terms of, wow, our content, some of it's kind of R, kind of X. Maybe we should do something about that and prevent people. So they created a self-organizing body, the MPAA. Right? They potentially had some impact on revenue streams. Right? A rated R movie doesn't make as much as a PG movie. Right? But they realized, wow, our industry has some societal impact. We're going to go self-regulate. Should Facebook, as an example, should these guys be regulating? Should the social networks come together and understand, wow, what is the psychological and medical impact of overuse on social devices? Should we cut these things off for kids of a certain age? Absolutely. I believe my kids are not going to use any of these social networks until probably 18. No, really, like their phones are kind of useless. It's like my 12-year-old got her iPhone. She's like, well, I can text on this. It's like, but should they do things like that? Yes. Are they going to do it? I don't think so. Therefore, should the government step in and regulate? I think absolutely. The businesses, because many of them are facing kind of existential business model issues with their second order effects, they're not going to self-regulate. They're not going to self-adjust. And in those environments, then I think that's what the government is for. Like, go figure out what the right thing to do is and go put those controls in place. And they might, as a result, you might over-index, but I kind of say that's almost the fault of the industry because you always have that first step of self-regulation and self-police. And if they don't take it, then so yes, in certain instances. Amazon's business, I would argue, right? Yeah, there's always a thread of should that be broken up? I think my one comment there is what most people don't grasp is or maybe they do. Search is aggregated points of search are hyper control points in the society, given the connectivity that we now live under in our mobile devices. That's why Google's $1 trillion market cap. Amazon, yes, has this amazing logistics and all this delivery, but like, what's the control point? It's basically a big commerce search engine, right? That's really what it is. And they've leveraged that control point into this other business. And so regulation around the people that control those search leverage points, so particular Google and Amazon, should there be new thoughts around what other businesses can you go into or how can that control point be mitigated, I think is valuable. Yeah.
Right. Next question. Surveying. Way back there. Do we have way back there?
What do you think about Germany's laws recently in terms of prescribing hate book speech and prosecuting companies, enforcing companies like Facebook to identify and take content offline? Do you think that's something we should do here in the United States?
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with exactly what they've done. Evite's mainly a US site, but the concept of, which is what a lot of tech uses, the concept of I am just an intermediary network like email, I'm just a tool, you can't hold me responsible for what flows through my system. It's not a bad argument for certain companies. So I would make a strong case that the email providers, right, the companies that are making the email tool that allows you to connect to and receive email, should they be responsible if a terrorist sends email across their network? I would argue not. Right? That is truly a it's a neutral communication system. It'd be almost impossible to police that. Like, should they try? Absolutely, I would argue. Right? Those companies should be investing in technologies to try to find that and root it out. Just, again, as a fourth stakeholder, I would think if I were running a large email platform, I'd be thinking, wow, can we pre-identify some things happening and funnel that to the right government agencies, right? Again, within the right privacy laws. I think that's something I would think about. Should it be mandated? Question mark. The problem is you have a whole bunch of companies that are taking that concept and saying, well, that's me. Like Facebook, I think, was effectively taking that stance. Like, no, we're an abstract platform, right? We can't control what's happening. And I think that's a completely bogus argument. It's like, no, that's not true. You are you let people buy your customer segments. Right? It's kind of like an email platform who is also selling access to the emails for profit, saying, oh, no, I'm going to sell it to a terrorist group. That's actually okay. Like, I'm not responsible for ensuring that buyer is not doing something bad. It's a completely different business model at this point, right? So in terms of the buying of the advertising, creating false accounts, right? All of these things, I would argue, start to put them out of the realm. There's some part of their business that is in that realm where they could say, am I responsible for a terrorist who opens a Facebook account and starts communicating? That's a little bit harder, but all of, say, the Russian interference, right? You're using the advertising platform to actually drive change, and you're making money off of it, right? That to me is a clear example of no, you have to clamp down on that.
All right. We have right there.
So I have a question around how are you preparing your business for the changes in generations between the workforce, specifically with like Gen Z coming in, being so heavily involved with technology, especially when you're trying to counteract maybe losing that face-to-face relationships with people when a generation who has heavy reliance with technology?
That's a good question. So a couple of answers, or a couple of pieces. One, the good news is because we are at our core literally genetically wired to be social, there's generally an arc that the society, even the young generation, will go through, and we see that, where they may be incredibly hyper disconnected when they're young, but a very, very large segment will actually end up in the process of getting married, having children, right? That actually is our core business starts effectively at that point in time. So at the point where the macro society social trends had changed, where like marriage rates had gone down or child rates had gone significantly down, then that would be a dampener on our business. I don't know that we could do anything about that. I think we would just need to adjust, because that is such a big societal change. So that's one thought. The other thought is we absolutely do think about how do we keep the business itself relevant for different user expectations from a younger generation. So an example of that, this year we're gonna spend a lot of energy just on the core Evite UX to modernize it, right? Make it a little bit more current, because if you pull it up now, if you showed Evite to kind of the average under 25 person, I think their immediate reaction would be, it kind of looks a little bit dated, maybe. Like I get it. My mom sends out her Evites, right? Is anyone here under 25 who has sent out their own Evite? Couple? One, two? Oh, thank you. I don't know if that answered your question completely, but.
Who else? Yes, right there.
Hi, so I know my name is Sean, second year MBA. Great speech, thank you very much. So I'm wondering, EY, like a lot of companies, you process a lot of very sensitive information that if it's there's a data breach or something like that, it will be like a big issue on privacy, as well as people with alternative agendas can actually track someone down. So can you talk about what your company has done about this issue, and how a industry or a conglomerate of companies that store personal information can step up as a whole?
Yeah, so we're actually lucky in that, maybe for good or for bad, we actually have a very light profile. We don't capture a lot of information. Right? If you've been invited to Evite, you can literally flow through that experience, you don't even have to register or sign up. You could still RSVP. And even when you do sign up, we don't know your birthday, we don't know your gender. Like, these are fields, they're all optional fields. So our profile is pretty light. What would get out into the open, I guess, if somebody breached our systems, they would know that you were like a crappy RSVPer. Could be used for some damage. But no, literally, like the core, I say that facetiously, but it's kind of true, right? Our core knowledge, what's unique about us is the social connections. Like, we know this person through this party sent out an invite to these people. We know that they responded or didn't. So we know that social dynamic. That's the main data that we use to kind of drive our business. So it's not super valuable. It's not super sensitive. So yeah, we're lucky from that perspective. Other companies, of course, in a very different position. You can do a lot. There's a lot of data floating out there that can do a lot of damage if it's not controlled. All of our systems run on all of the big cloud infrastructure providers, so that's also pretty good. Like, Google and Amazon are generally pretty good about their security infrastructure. We get to leverage all of that. So.
Okay. We have one there, and then Claudio had his hand up, so I'm going to recognize him.
Hi, Victor. Good presentation. You talked about how you at Evite are looking across the spectrum there from the fourth stakeholder, and how you're challenging the company. What are some of the challenges that your employees are challenging you on to do some change? What are they bringing to you to kind of fit into that fourth stakeholder mode?
You know, from that perspective, nothing. I think one of the biggest draws for, like literally we have employees who are, when we hire, they will actually come to us. This is a great example of I guess, evidence that this works. Like they will come to us and we'll ask, well, what's exciting about Evite? You're looking at Facebook. They're like, oh, we saw that you guys just raised $20 million, right, for social cause, and we see that your business is about bringing people together. They're like, that's exciting. So there's a younger generation where I think the purpose, the cause, the social impact, it's actually a draw. So that's great to see. No, there's no, I think because we do so many things in so many levels, we don't have there's no unfulfilled societal request that I can see within the business. Our requests actually tend to be in that employee bucket. Like, can you add more bagels? Foosball table, please.
Victor, could you repeat your purpose again? How did you phrase it?
Our core purpose is to bring people together face to face.
Okay, that's great. There's been a lot of literature, a lot of research into the relationship between an authentic business purpose and success for companies. In fact, some discussion of exponential potential because you're availing yourself of feelings and goodwill that goes beyond the people you hire. Do you see that with your business? Do you see that, given that you have such an authentic purpose and it's really what your company is about, in what ways are you seeing that purpose gives you something extra, either in marketing or in just a word of mouth or in people building employee with goodwill or vendors or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say in the stack rank right now, the biggest impact is actually employee goodwill, because the reality is on the consumer side, because of the solution that we provide, right, we're the invitation, people today don't attribute the emotion of that moment to us. Right, today, right, the mental model is, look, I am going to throw a party. I'm thinking of organizing it, and then it's like, oh, Evite can help me, right? They can help me manage it. They can make it easier. But people don't necessarily walk out thinking, oh, like that happened because of Evite. It's like it helped me. So there's a little bit of goodwill, but it's not at that point of amplification. From a business strategy perspective, though, that's absolutely our goal to expand our functionality broader and broader. So at some point in the future, not today or not this year, but at some point of the vision of the future, we do start to become a broader platform where maybe because we've made it so easy to plan or to ideate or whatever it is, that people look back and think, wow, I actually got together because of Evite. I think when we get to that point, then we might start seeing those consumer and scale lifts. So I think in the short term, it's more on the employee side.
Okay, one last question if we could, and we have it.
Hello. Hi, Victor. Thank you. My name is Belinda Tan. I'm a physician and a tech entrepreneur. Question for you. It's somewhat philosophical. I think every single person in this room has clicked on a terms and services after downloading apps, getting upgrades on their various devices without having any time to read it, nor the education to understand all the terminology. What do you think is the responsibility of a tech leader to enable that balance between legal protection for the organization and transparency to consumers?
So what's the balance? I don't think we've done it yet. I've always wanted to have like a super simple version of the TOS and the privacy policy. I don't think we've done it yet, but one thought is like just simplify it because nobody's ever going to read. Like it's all there. So one, make it easy to digest. But I think a bigger one is really the substance of what's underneath. Like what is the core underlying business policy? I would stick that in my impact circle frame under that kind of business policies and process. All right, so example for Evite, even though there's like a meme floating out sometimes in the press that this is not true, we don't sell any personal data. People have this perception, oh, Evite, you're getting all this personal data and you're selling it. And like, you know when my kid's birthday is? Like, no, we don't do that. And if you actually did go through the privacy policy, I think you'd feel very comfortable. So we need to do a better job of up-leveling it. But I think it goes back to that core. Like, have you set your foundational policies themselves to be something that, whether that the consumer is even aware or not, like are they good? Are they like legit? Would you feel good telling your kids this is what we're doing? That's kind of a rule of thumb I have. Like anything the business does, you should be able to stand up in front of your mother and your children and say this is what we're doing and why, and not do that with shame. Right? If you can do that, then you're probably doing like decent things.